So we have the ATEM HD8 ISO today, and this was sent over to me by Blackmagic. So special shout out and thanks to Blackmagic for providing this and a few other pieces of gear. One of the things that I wanted to show off was just the size comparison. So this is the ATEM SDI Extreme ISO. From a width standpoint, you can see it's about 1.5 times larger than the ATEM SDI Extreme. As far as how long it is, it's definitely much bigger. It's easily double ATEM size. So I would argue it's probably about twice the size of this ATEM. But there's a few things to understand in how this works differently, and so I think that it's we'll go over some of that today. Uh, I see this ATEM as kind of the baby of the combined features of the ATEM Advanced panel, which is the control panel that's used for any of the rack mount switchers, and then also taking the ATEM, one of the 8-input Extreme ATEMs. So I see this as like a merging of the two with a few additional features. Now, as far as transporting this goes, it's really not all that heavy. I just imagine that any case that's going to be padded enough to protect this is going to be much significantly larger than the ATEM itself. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you're somebody who likes to travel light, or if you're somebody that's building a rack mounted unit. This is definitely going to be a little wider than your typical rack mount. So if you need to go really small, really portable, definitely stick to the ATEM Extreme model because it's just going to be that much smaller and compact and easier to fit into a rack case. However, one of the big pluses to this, and what I really like about this, is I love the button style. So I do have the advanced control panel. I like switching with these style of buttons. They're more like they're kind of like a harder square shape, a little bit more kind of like the Stream Decks, versus the gummy kind of softer buttons on these ATEMs that I think are a little bit almost too easy to push sometimes. So you might accidentally hit one of these buttons when you don't mean to. Versus with these, I think that it's very intentional. You really have to, as they say, punch it. It's you're a lot less likely to hit one of these buttons over here. One of the things that I don't like about it is that the T-bar here is very easy to smack because of the positioning of it. I would have liked to have seen the T-bar be almost maybe a little further over. The fact that it's right next to the cut and auto buttons, I think it's just a little too easy to push something by accident. So one of the habits that I have is when I'm working with something like this, I'll make sure that the T-bar is actually pushed all the way up before I start a show if I'm not using it. And I think that's a better way of switching if you're not going to use that. So if you're not doing any sort of like really long fades, like maybe if you're in church or a house of worship where you're trying to do like a full 5 or 6 second crossfade between shots, that might make sense. But at least in the corporate scenarios where I've been, it hasn't really been as necessary. The one time I did use it, there was a concert at the end of one of our conferences. And so for the concert, it made perfect sense. It worked out really well. So that's one of the things that I don't like about this. A few features that I do like are, one, there are safeties here so you don't accidentally hit the fade to black button. You have these little plastic nubs on the sides so that it prevents you from accidentally just kind of running or brushing your shoulder over it or your elbow over it. Same thing goes with the on-air and off-air recording buttons. They also have this sort of protector here so that you can be really intentional about hitting that button. Another feature that I didn't realize until I got this, and I don't think they really talk about this online, is that on the back of this, there are two stands that pop out. They're like feet that pop out. And so that's a really nice feature just to like get this angled up at the right angle for using it. I think that's really great for ergonomics and just making this more comfortable for using on the long haul. Another thing that I really enjoy about this switcher is you've got LCD screens here where you can see and customize your inputs. So if you're using this switcher, you see everything right here, right? And even if you're only switching a show with maybe 2 or 3 inputs, like 2 or 3 cameras, you still have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it's super easy to hit those by accident. And so, with this, at least you can customize the panel and you can pick and choose and remove. So like, even though the buttons are there, you can disable them from doing anything. And then you can also label. So instead of seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can actually see labeled camera 1 or wide shot or laptop or PC. I can route these buttons however I want. So if I go into the settings and button mapping, I can take button 1, and as I dial it in here to camera 5, now it puts camera 5 here. And I can also customize the colors of it too. So I can have it light up any color that I want. I can also set it to none, so I don't accidentally take camera 1 if nothing's plugged into camera 1. So I can kill that off. Another thing that I like is if you do have macros, you can turn on the macros button, which enables this row here. And then based on however you have named your macros in the ATEM, you'll actually see those names here, and then you can punch up those macros as needed. So you can almost make this be like a 2ME switcher in a sense that not that you're switching other downstream keyers in two different shows, but if you wanted to have your main show here that you're switching, you could set your macros to be controlling your aux outputs, and you could switch a second show, so to speak, from your aux outputs right here. Additionally, you also have the aux controls, so I can set aux 1 or aux 2 and control what input is routing to those all from right here. So I've got a whole lot of ways that I could be switching. Like maybe I set macros so that the macros control aux 1, and then this is just sitting on aux 2. And then I kind of have 3 different shows to switch because I have my main show. I'll let my macros switch aux 1, and then I'll leave this on aux 2, and I can switch this show all simultaneously. And that's really great if you're in a room where you need to switch what's going to TV screens or projectors or anything like that. Like you can see all those custom labels that you can put in there. And for me, I like that because when I'm switching, every event is going to be different. And so being able to have that custom feature and be able to really see what I'm hitting and not have to think like, oh, PowerPoint slides are on 3. Like it takes away some of that guesswork, and it just makes it so much more efficient in your workflow. Another thing that I like about this is that we've mostly gotten rid of the control buttons here for Blackmagic cameras. Now, I know Blackmagic sent this to me, and so I have to say some nice things here, but I typically don't switch with Blackmagic cameras. It's just not part of my workflow. I'm usually using Canon cameras, sometimes Sony cameras. We are going to test out some other Blackmagic cameras in other videos, so I'm excited to do that. But by taking out all of these camera control features like focus gain, all of these settings, it's opening up more space on the control panel to be used for things that you're going to be using more in the show. So if we're doing the camera controls, I'm going to press on the camera button here. Then I've got all my settings up here now, which I can also see over on the computer screen. So if I'm adjusting and you pick what camera you want. So I can pick cameras 1, 2, or 3 and go down the line from here. Once I'm on camera 1, which is the only one that I have plugged in, I can go to my iris control. So you'll see as I tweak the iris, it's going to get darker and brighter. Pedestal, and you'll see this all getting adjusted over on the ATEM software screen as well. Gain, all controlled from right here. Just using these knobs. Zoom, so if you have a power zoom lens, you can zoom using this. We don't have a power zoom lens on there right now. Focus as well, so I can dial in my focus. So right now you can see it's going out of focus. But if I wanted it in focus, I can put up something for it to look at, press the auto button, and it does a one tap to focus. All of my red, green, and blue master controls, so I can really tweak a lot of the colors in there. If I hit cam one more time, I'm also going to get the lift, gamma, and gain option, so I can really dial in all of the red, green, and blue colors on there. And then last but not least, we have a color section, so I can tweak the contrast. So if I adjust this from here, it changes live on the camera. White balance. So we get our white balance dialed in. Saturation, hue, everything right from here. ND filters, if we were outside, you can actually turn on those ND filters. If you have a camera with NDs, shutter speed, everything's tweaked from right there. And that brings me to another point that I should probably bring up about this is that this ATEM also comes with a cardboard cutout so that if you're cutting out a table or a desk in a studio, they have that full outline and full scale measurement so that you can draw that when you're making your cuts. And I think that's really what this was designed for. And it's probably important to mention that here is that this ATEM was more designed for a studio usage case where you're most likely going to be in the Blackmagic environment most of the time. Um, Reason being, it's larger. It could be portable, but I think it wasn't designed to be as much as it was designed to be used in a studio case. And that's also due to the inputs and outputs, which I want to talk about here next. So when you use the Blackmagic equipment, one of the great features is that you have camera control, full control. So you can tweak the color, you can tweak the shutter speed, the gain, everything from the ATEMs. And it's a wonderful feature if you're in a full Blackmagic environment. So let's talk about the inputs and outputs and how this particular unit was really built to be able to do that so that a one-man band really could run everything from here. The only thing that I think about when I'm doing a shoot is typically I have at least one or two camera operators, even if I have like PTZ cameras. So it's pretty rare that I want to be the one-man band that's tweaking the color and everything from this device. Like I want to be focusing on running the show, switching the show, managing the client, things like that. So normally I would prefer the camera operator be tweaking those things and then I can just communicate to them over comms. But if you're using this switcher in that type of scenario, like all Blackmagic gear, let's talk about the backside of this. So I'm going to put this guy away and we're going to switch this around real quick. All right, so on the back side of this ATEM switcher, you'll notice something a little bit different when it comes to the inputs and the outputs. So on the SDI extreme, you've got 8 inputs and then you have 4 outputs, and all 4 of those outputs are completely assignable. So you can send any camera input to an output. You could also send your multi-view to an output. You can choose to send, you can do a countdown timer if you wanted, right? But with this ATEM, there are 8 inputs and 8 outputs, and all 8 of those outputs are the program return feed that would go back to the camera and provide that camera control information so that you could tweak the camera. Now, if you're not using Blackmagic gear, you can use those 8 outputs as just a program output to anywhere, whether it's a screen, a recorder, or something else. And then I'm going to talk, there are some more outputs. So it's not just stuck there. You're not stuck with 8 program only outputs. But this was designed to be able to work in that sort of studio setting where you could send a return feed to up to 8 Blackmagic cameras, and that would allow you to do all that camera control all from right here. Now, there's a few more outputs on the back of this that I want to go over. In particular, there are 2 aux outputs. There's an aux out 1 and 2. There's a program output and a multi-view output. All right, so let's talk a little bit about that usage case. And then also there is a multi-view output that's HDMI. So there's 4 that are SDI. You've got aux 1, aux 2, multi-view, and program. But then there's a multi-view that's also HDMI. So aux 1 and aux 2 are fully routable. So if I want to send PowerPoint slides to aux 1, I can do that. If I wanted to send just another program feed to aux 1 or aux 2, I can do that as well. I've got a dedicated multi-view output, so that's always going to be multi-view no matter what. But having both SDI and HDMI is really nice because a lot of the monitors, especially if you're moving up to this ATEM from another ATEM, a lot of the monitors you might have gotten originally might be HDMI only. Or if you're using a TV or a computer monitor or something a little bit cheaper than a production monitor, then you have that flexibility. You don't have to go converting SDI to HDMI just to get it back into the monitor and need another converter just to be able to use it. So that's really nice there that they've added that touch. Personally, I would love to see at some point an ATEM that has 1 or 2 HDMI inputs because there's so many times where we're taking a laptop or a PC into the ATEM, whether it's for PowerPoint slides or video playbacks or something else. And it would have been really valuable to have that without needing to do any sort of conversion there. That's a story for another time. I think that if you're in a studio setting, then you might have like a video hub router and other things in place and converters that signal is hitting before it gets to the ATEM. But at some point down the line, I would love to see like if they make a baby between the Extreme model and this model where it's a bigger panel like this, I would love to see like 2 HDMI inputs just to have it there and to use with any computers. Um, and then also on the back here, there's a lot of audio outputs. So there's a control out that's 1/4 inch left and right, a studio out that's left and right and 1/4 inch, and then we have a stereo in, and then we've got XLR channel inputs 1 and 2. So having XLR on this as opposed to the 3.5mm on the ATEMs is just nice because XLR is pretty much what we're using across the board. So for our audio mixer and all of our mics and everything else, to have XLR ready to go and not need to use an XLR to 3.5 adapter cable or anything like that is a really nice added feature. And I like having the two, that they kept the two channel 1 and channel 2, just like they had on the ATEM, so that you have 2 inputs on here. There is also the, I don't know a lot of people that use it, but we have that 5-pin talkback if you're using talkback. So if you've got any sort of intercom system going through the cameras, especially in that studio environment, makes perfect sense to use that there. If you're out in the field, though, using something like this ATEM, might not make as much sense. You might want to use your own wireless intercom setup. Me, I use the Hollyland Solidcom C1. They've been fantastic. I've also had the EarTechs. They were nice too, not as comfortable on the head, so definitely a bigger fan on the Hollyland side. One thing that people also don't realize about this ATEM is that it has a built-in Ethernet switch, and it has 4 ports on the back. And so what you could do is you could connect this ATEM, whether it's to your router or to whatever you have on site at the venue for an internet connection, and you can stream out directly from there, but you can share the signal. It's a switch. So I could connect 1 or 2 laptops to this as well if I have to get on the internet, if I need to download some PowerPoint files or assets for the live stream. So that's a really nice added feature and saves me one more item that I have to have on my tech table. So I don't have to now have, a power cord, an internet switch, and taking up extra space. It's all right here. Just take a couple Ethernet cables, connect your laptops, and you're good to go. So that's another feature that a lot of people haven't really discussed, and it's a really nice feature built into this. If you have the optional M2 add-on, then you've got storage that's built into this for your ISO recordings, but you do have your 2 USB-C connections, A and B, on the back that you can use for recording straight to a solid-state drive. I did notice that the M2 drive, if there is one, it doesn't look like there is a slot to be able to go in and replace it or change it out or upgrade it. Perhaps there's an opportunity to open this guy up and do that, but I don't know if it's something that's maybe soldered into the board or anything like that. So it's not as simple as just, pop one out and pop a new one in, but to be able to still just have that USB connection, plug in a couple SSDs is very, very nice. All in all, a fantastic unit. I love that it's added in the LCDs. I love that we have more capabilities on the audio side. There's a lot of nice little twisty, turny knobs here, so I can tweak audio. Typically for my setups, it's going through someone who is running an audio mixer themselves, but occasionally we do have some audio follows video on various video playback laptops and things that just come through our ATEM on our live stream. So being able to tweak those volumes from here is really nice without needing an extra output to their audio mixer. We can just do that on our end. So all in all, really, really cool device. I'm excited to use this a little bit more, but just wanted to do an overview, kind of talk about some of the pluses and minuses. And I will say it's relatively light for what it is. I'm pretty darn impressed with how light it is and how easy it is to handle. And the build quality, as always with Blackmagic, while this is mostly a plasticky feel, it does feel higher end. It does feel like it's going to last me for quite some time. So thank you so much for watching this video. And if you want to learn more about the ATEM HD8 ISO, we'll make some more content for you in the next one. See you next time.